Hello, everyone. My name is Shane Gorbett from the Kalamazoo and Aquarium, and this is the presentation that was given at IMATA 2022 in Chicago, going beyond the crate, training a social group of 10 California sea lions for all aspects of a transport. Training for an animal transport can go beyond the physical act of voluntary crate training because during a transport, an animal's environment plays a critical role. And that environment will more than likely be different and changing. So that became the central focus of the Kalamazoo and Aquarium's pinniped trainers while training and preparing our animals for a transport. We wanted to train the animals to be prepared for that changing environment that would be different from their normal day to day, and then also be resilient to those changes. And then hopefully throughout the entire process, make the transport less stressful and more positive for the animals. So we transported 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, nope, that's right. 10 California sea lions all at once, including 4 intact adult males. The reason that we were transporting was because the Kalamazoo Aquarium sea lion habitat wasn't finished until May of 2020. However, the sea lions, some of them came from a facility in China. They arrived in the United States in 2017. So those 10 animals lived in a satellite facility in Maca City, Florida, while the habitat in Columbus was finished. So, of course, we started with the basics of voluntary crate training. And we wanted to make sure that this behavior was really positive, really solid for the animals, that the animals were really comfortable while being in the crate. But then once we got to that point, once we felt that crate training behavior was really solid, really positive for all of our animals, we decided to ask ourselves, how can we go beyond the crate? What other aspects of the transport will be changing and different than the animal's normal day to day? And what could we potentially train our animals to be prepared for? So obviously there were some environmental aspects that we can't control. For example, weather, giant floods flooding the entire facility, alligators wandering into our training areas, massive amounts of wood storks sitting in the trees right above the habitat making a lot of loud annoying noises, and even rogue cows. So you're probably laughing, but this is an actual picture I took and an actual problem that we did have to deal with. However, there were parts of the transport that we knew we'd be able to try to train our animals for to prepare them for the differences that would happen during their transport. So one of the first things that we identified was the fact that there were going to be a lot of different vehicles driving around the facility. On transport day, there's going to be 2 semi-trucks, 2 forklifts, other vehicles, a lot of other people the sea lions had never seen before and normally weren't there in their normal day-to-day. And with budget cuts, the Kalamazoo could not give us a semi-truck to practice with. So we didn't have that, but what we did have was a forklift. So we decided to use that forklift to kind of mimic the movement of the vehicles during the transport. Because on transport day, a sea lion would voluntarily crate, then the forklift would come up, lift the crate up, take the crate to the semi-truck, and then have to bring another crate back. So what we started doing was in between crate training sessions, we would drive the forklift around the facility in that exact same pattern, helping the sea lions get used to seeing the forklift moving around their training areas after doing a training session. Then, obviously, since they were getting lifted by the crate, we wanted to also train our animals to be positively lifted up by that forklift while they are moved into the transport vehicles. So that first started with desensitizing them to the forklift. So driving around the facility was a great first start to that. But then the next thing we did is we actually left the forklift parked in training areas. So you can see when Toby's doing a session, the forklift is just in the habitat, in the environment, making that a normal, positive part of their day. Next, we wanted to work on a forklift driving next to the crate and all the different noises that would come with that. So the different noises of the forks going up and down. Also, we had a very obnoxious backing up sound like most large machineries make. And the forklift that we used was very questionable in their working abilities and it would constantly stall. So we worked on revving the engine, getting the animals comfortable while they're in the crate, the forklift moving around, being near it before actually engaging the forks into the crate. And then all that came together with the final product of the sea lions being calm and comfortable in their crate while the forklift came up to them and also lifted them. So you can see Nana through that reinforcement window. He's nice and calm, he's attentive, he's looking at his trainer while the forklift is going up and down. Now, like I said, had a very questionable forklift, so we only got about 3 feet off the ground. We didn't want to flip the forklift or the sea lion in the crate, but we were able to train our sea lions to be used to the sensation of being lifted up. And this is one of my favorite videos. This is a forklift malfunction from one of my coworkers who shall remain nameless. Unless you know Megan Saylor, then please email me back and we can tell you more about that. But basically, the e-brake of the forklift was left on. So Bodega was suspended in the crate for around 3 minutes. And you can tell during the entire session, he was calm, comfortable. He stayed looking forward, engaged with me as his trainer. And it was a really great way to show us that the crate, the forklift were not aversive. They were a positive experience for Bodega. And he could be in a situation where he's never been in before, being suspended and still be nice and comfortable. One of the other things that we thought about was not necessarily part of the environment, but we wanted to work on transitioning our animals to the use of non-fish reinforcers, because before and during the transport, they were only allowed a small amount of fish. This is to help prevent sickness during the drive. Also, it's going to create a lot less waste in the crate since we were going to be moving for about 24 hours. So on transport day, the sea lions would only be reinforced with Jello in the crate. So what we started doing was when they got really solid in that behavior, we started fading out receiving fish in the crate to mostly receiving Jello. So we wanted to do this because we wanted our animals to understand that, wanted them to expect that when we asked them to go into the crate, they're expecting Jello. They're not expecting fish. So that way on transport day, they go into the crate, they're expecting a lot of fish, instead they get Jello. We wanted them to already be prepared for that, to understand that my trainers are going to ask me into the crate, and I'm going to be reinforced with Jello and not fish. And then also, as I talk about later in the presentation, this was important for another reason as well. And since we were going from Florida to Ohio, over 1,000 miles, we were anticipating the transport would take about 24 hours. So we started to think of how can we have our animals spend longer durations in the crate positively, because up to this point, they'd only spent the amount of time that a training session lasted. So depending on the animal, that was 5 to 10 minutes. So one of the first things we thought of was, why don't we place a crate inside the habitat with the door propped open? So somehow if you're able to look past the cute piercing gaze of Bodega, over his head, you're going to see that crate inside the habitat. It was a great way for animals to go in and out, explore the crate outside of training sessions. We even saw animals sleep inside of the crate. And one of the really funny things was, if we had multiple males in this habitat, a lot of times one would stay in the pool to defend that, and the other would actually go into the crate to defend the crate. We also placed crates in our training areas. So you can see our 2 habitats were up top, and then the crate right above the habitat on the left, that is the one that stayed inside. Those 4 crates behind the habitat are extra ones that would be moved during transport. And then in the bottom, you can see our 2 training crates that were in those training areas. So that way we were able to do sessions with our animals that wasn't just crate training. The crates were there. We could use it to ask other maintained behaviors. We could have them be positive interactions in the crate and know that every time we're going in, it wasn't just asking them to go into the crate and close the door, but instead making those crates a little more dynamic. Then finally, we worked on our sea lions spending long durations in the crate without a trainer present. So we wanted them to spend longer durations, but also for them to understand that they can be in the crate without a trainer actively in front of them. So we started to close the crate door and actually end the session and have our trainer walk away. We had a window with a kitchen right by that we were able to monitor them, and then we could go back and reinforce them at variable intervals and variable durations for being nice and calm and just sitting in the crate. All of this came together into probably what the most important part of the training was, which was our mock transport moving days. So we did this once a week, and basically we set it up just like it was a transport. And we did this because we wanted to familiarize the animals with the routine of transport day, since it was going to be different. So the goal was to make this as normal as possible to them, so on transport day they weren't surprised by anything. Now, obviously, we didn't have a semi-truck, so we had to be a little bit creative in that aspect. Now, another reason we want to do these mock moving days was we have one large fluid social group. Groups change daily, all animals go together, and we move that around. However, animals were going to have to be in specific moving groups. So we started transitioning to moving them and housing them in their moving groups more often to make that also another aspect that was a little more common and normal for them. And the reason we had to have specific moving orders was an adult male had to be the first to load and also the last to load onto the transport trucks because we had to balance the trucks for weight. And we also really sat down and thought about what animals socially would be the best combinations for these moving groups, and this is what we came up with. So ultimately, the main reason for the transport days was we wanted them to get used to this routine, but also we wanted to try to teach the animals to prepare them that they're going to see their conspecifics moved into a crate and not return back to the habitat. And a big part of that was we wanted to train our males that were going to be left alone in a pool to not stay and defend it. Because normally, since we only had 2 habitats, we would have animals come out, do a training session, and then go back. So animals were always leaving animals and going back into the animals in the habitat. So we wanted to make sure that our males were learning to not stay, defend the pool, but instead that they were wanting to leave that empty pool that would be easy to defend to go and do a crate training session. So Nana, you look really cute with that hairdo, but we're looking at you. We're focusing on you for this one. So going through what our mock transport looked like, Chitsai was our first animal. He would come out, voluntarily crate, bring that forklift down, raise him up, and then bring the forklift back, pretending like he was going into the semi-truck. But like I said, we did not have semi-trucks. Budget cuts, once again, did not allow for that. However, we were able to get a little creative, and the other company that worked at this facility would actually allow us to use one of their habitats during this. So then Chitsai would move over to this far habitat. So this is how we were able to mimic the conspecifics leaving in a crate and not returning back into the habitat. These habitats are far enough away. Of course, they can still hear each other. However, they don't have visual line of sight. So this was as best we could do with having the animals leave and not come back. So then we bring that forklift back down, pretending like they were replacing that crate, and then that goes back. Next were Columbia and Lavelle, 2 of our younger females that went to a crate together, brought the forklift over. It must have been my coworker with the malfunction driving that because that was some crazy driving. Raise them up, forklift goes back, and then Columbia and Lavelle would also go to this far habitat, then bring that forklift like we were replacing the crate that just left, and then goes back. And now we're left with exactly what we wanted to focus on. Nana, one of our adult males, is by himself in a pool. His conspecifics have left, so training him to not stay and defend the pool, but rather go and do a crate training session just like that. And then with him, we'd do the same thing that we just did. And then he would also end in this far habitat because we needed the other moving group to be generalized, used to seeing this habitat empty. These are really close. They have line of sight of each other. As rarely would ever happen that it would be an empty pool. So we wanted this other moving group to be used to that. And then Simba, he was the last animal that got crated with all of them. So we also wanted to try to find ways where Simba would not be able to see any other sea lions and still do his crate training sessions. So then it arrived, the transport day, May 15th, 2020. You can see that we were all excited and ready, and so were the animals. They did a great job. All the animals voluntarily crated, positively loaded into the transport vehicles in under 2 hours. And coming up is a really cool video of Chitsai. You can see he's in the crate being moved by the forklift. He's nice and calm, comfortable, just looking around. A common sign of distress in sea lions is rolling, and instead he's sitting there nice and comfortable. I'm actually going to reinforce him with some jello for being nice and comfortable, and we saw that across the board with our animals. And I love this video. This is Simba, who just got lifted 12 feet into the air into a truck he's never been into, and he's completely relaxed, just looking around. He's like, another day, another fish. That's right, it was awesome, Pablo, I agree. But not only was it successful for the animals, but also us as trainers. We had 35 hours of working, over 1,000 miles, and you can tell that we really handled that well. We did not get loopy at all. And also, if you're interested in our whistle album, that'll be dropping within the month, so let us know. But wait, there's a little bit more, some science. So at the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium, we have a robust welfare program. So we wanted to see how the animals biologically would react to the transport and the training that we did. So we partnered with the Ohio State University, OH. I'm really hoping someone out there said IO, otherwise just move on from that. But we partnered with Ohio State to do a salivary cortisol concentration research to measure the stress of the animals during this move. So the first step of that was training our animals to do a voluntary mouth swab underneath their tongue, holding it open, and then we transitioned to doing that inside the crate because on the transport, we'd be taking swabs while they were in the crate. And during the transport, we took samples a week before, the morning of, during 3 stops during the transport, once we arrived in Columbus, and then also a week after arrival. So during those stops, we did Tampa, Atlanta, and Louisville. And this was in the crate. And this video with Pablo and Bodega is one of my favorites because this was outside of Louisville at 2 in the morning. So after 19 hours of transport, Bodega and all of our other sea lions are still participating in this, and we were able to get those mouth swabs from them. And this was also an important reason that we transitioned them to using Jello, because during these 3 stops during the transport, we would not be allowed to give them fish, but instead we'd be reinforcing them with that Jello. So then 24 hours later, we arrived home in Columbus, and it was really great to see how positively all the animals reacted. They were calm, comfortable, followed their trainers. Pop was excited, Nana was excited, I was excited. Everybody was really excited. And it was great to see that through the lens of behavior, all of our animals were calm and comfortable during the loading, transport, and arrival back here to their forever home in Columbus. And looking at that salivary cortisol concentration research, we actually found that during the transport, during those 3 stops, the salivary cortisol concentration levels did not change. So there are a couple of things that could play into that. 4 of our animals were given a small dose of Valium, something that our vets wanted us to do. However, it's likely that by the time we got to the Atlanta and Louisville stops, that effects have worn off. But this is also a mean of all of them, so that is a factor. But also, it could be possible, and we think it's possible, that the training for the transport that we did reduce the stress of the animals. Those positive relationships, the time they spent in the crate, actually helped to reduce their stress during this whole process. And in the end, what we can say is that we know the welfare of the animals weren't compromised by the transport, looking at both their biological and behavioral signals. And to us, this is clear signs of the positive relationships that the animals formed with their trainers, the crates, and other aspects of the transport process allowed for a smooth and positive transition to their new home. And looking into the future, we think that this training and research could be replicated in other species, especially in ambassador animals that are created and transported frequently. And this can be done to show how transporting animals can be a positive experience for them. And we really do hope that other animal care professionals will consider the changing environment and all aspects of a transport when training their animals for a move.